Hey everybody, Jack Close Painting here with a new video. These are some of the paints we're going to be using. Pro Acryl, Mr. Hobby Weathering Wash, and anything that says user's choice, that's up to you guys to decide. So today we're going to be working on this really cool model here. This is a true scale Terminator hero from a really cool caster over in the UK. Goes by Captain Calico. I'll have a link to his shop down in the description. And it's a Grey Knight. Yep, your eyes are not deceiving you. It's time for some Grey Knight action. We're getting that new Psychic Awakening book here soon, and I wanted to have a dope tutorial for painting Grey Knights because it looks like they're back. First things first, I have this guy primed up with a little bit of black and gray so you can see the details on the model. And because we are going to be painting a lot of metallics on this guy, I want those metallics to be vibrant. I want them to pop, hit them with a gloss varnish. Now, once that is dry, we're going to be spraying our metallics on top of that, and that will create a more shiny, vibrant metallic surface. This is our first paint color. I've got dark silver with literally one drop of Pro Acryl transparent blue mixed into that, like a 4:1 ratio. Some flow improver, and I'm going to do an all over spray on this model, leaving only the deepest cracks and details with some of that black primer showing through so that we have a nice high contrast metallic armor workup. Next, I'm going to grab our Pro Acryl Silver, and again, literally one drop of transparent blue, about a 4:1 ratio. It's very, very powerful stuff. You can see we have that super, super vibrant blue steel color in the airbrush, and I'm going to lightly spray on top of the model, keeping a pretty high angle. I'm not going to be focusing any one area with this paint like I would when doing a matte color gradient. We're just going to do a high top down to 45-degree angle spray on the model, making sure to leave the deepest shadowed areas where that darker steel color is showing through, because again, we want a nice high contrast true metallic shine on this guy. Now I'm going to pull out some speed metal. This was not in our paint list because this is an optional step. Speed metal is exceptionally shiny. It's like a white steel color, and I'm going to very carefully spray this on some of the areas that I want to pop the very most. So if you want to take your Grey Knights up to this next level of shininess, you can. I kind of prefer this look, but I know some people want a more base steel color, a little bit less polished shine on there, guys, so that's why this step is optional. Next, we're going to start hand painting our details. I'm going to start off with some black paint. Again, this is a user's choice color, so whatever you want to use. And anything that you want to be black, just go ahead and paint that in. I like to create black rubber joints on Space Marines that have a lightly colored armor. So in this case, I would say shiny steel is a light color. So I want that color separation in the joints with some black rubber. I'm also going to do things like black out his halberd blade, setting that up for a power weapon effect later down the road. Now that that's done, we're going to focus on his tabard, and I've got some light umber. You don't have to use light umber, just a lighter or medium brown. I like laying down a thin single coat of this on areas that I'm going to paint bone colors or very light parchment type colors. It helps that light paint cover with less coats. And as you can see, we still have a lot of that black primer showing through on his tabard. And I don't want to have to paint a light bone color on top of black. That's no fun. It doesn't really work out. You have to use a ton of coats. So setting that up with a little light brown is a time saver and a helper. Next, I'm going to come in with some light warm gray. This is a great start for some sort of cream colored off-white cloth or a parchment color. I'm going to be using the same color for our purity seals, but after the wash and highlights, we're going to be using different colors so that the finish on these pieces makes them look like different materials. So same thing, I've set up those purity seals with some of that light brown, and I'm wanting to base coat over them with a solid coat of light warm gray. After that, we're going to cut in the color on his little butt cape, whatever these are called. A lot of Space Marines have these butt capes, especially Terminators. And I'm just using burnt red from Pro Acrylic. This is again a user's choice color. You can use any mid-tone to dark red to set up, or maybe whatever color you want. Maybe you want your Grey Knights to have like green capes or blue capes or whatever. So totally up to you. In this instance, I'm using some burnt red from Pro Acrylic. Once we have a solid coat on that, I'm going to snip off a little piece of construction paper from my work surface here, and I'm going to use that as an airbrush shield. And you can see I'm using my thumb and this little piece of paper to create a shield so that I can airbrush the hem of this butt cape and get a nice soft airbrush highlight on there for some good looking cape fabric. In this case, I'm using some bold Pyrrole red, so a lighter, more orangey red to highlight up this red cape. So totally optional what colors you use, but those are the two I use for that workup. After that, I'm going to pull out a darker blue color and cut in all of the Purity Seal wax seals. I like the idea of having these be a different color than some of the other stuff on the armor. So I know traditionally they're red wax, but I like the blue since we're not going to have a whole lot of actual blue items on this model. And then we're going to start cutting in all of the bronze and brass. You can use any type of gold paint that you want. I'm using bronze from Pro Acrylic. I really like the idea of having the juxtaposition of very, very bright polished silvered armor and a more toned down rich bronze for all of the trim pieces. So I'm just going to cut all of those in with a nice base coat. With all of our base colors cut in, I'm going to get our wash game going. I'm using the Mr. Hobby Weathering wash system with some multi-black. And the first thing I'm doing is painting the diluting solvent all over the model to get it lubed up. And then I'm going to start dipping my brush into that multi-black and getting all over this guy. Now, you can pre-dilute this if you want to. I've done that in the past in previous videos. But for this guy, because he's primarily mostly metal in his entire workup, I want a more concentrated multi-black so that I can shade those metallic parts of his body really, really deeply. And once you get all of that on there, now I'm going to start the process of blending and cleaning it up using the solvent. So just constantly getting the solvent into my brush, moving it around the model, diluting that multi-black, wicking away any excess as it pools up, and blending it out into the details so that our big flat open surfaces do not have any coffee staining. Next, I'm going to heavily dilute some of our transparent blue and create sort of a pen wash. Now, the transparent colors from Pro Acryl are exceptionally densely pigmented. It's basically an ink, even though it's really a paint, but it kind of acts like an ink. And I'm going to do some pen washing. And what that means is I'm going to get my small little brush here and just drop some of that into the details, paint it into some of the deepest details to create that really iconic granite sort of blue tinted steel look around some of the deeper panel lines and details. Once that's totally dry, we're going to start highlighting up our metallics. And what I'm doing right here is what I like to call some half-assed dry brushing. So I'm taking my regular brush, I think this is a size 0 or a size 1, and I am getting it loaded up with some of our bright silver paint and getting most of it out of there, like I would a normal dry brush. You can see me removing a lot of it on my glove there. And basically I want to gently rub this detail brush over the model and sort of buff up and dry brush the areas that I want that shine to come back to our armor. So it's a way of doing a dry brush without actually using a big honking dry brush and flicking paint all over the place. So I can come in and basically use this dry brush like a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. And I'm going to do the same thing for our bronze. I've just taken some of that same bright silver that I had on the palette and just mix it into our bronze to kind of brighten it up a little bit. And you can go more of a gold route if you want to. I listed a gold on our paint list, so if you want to do that you can, but in this case I'm sticking with the bronze brass look, and so that's why I mixed the silver into the bronze to highlight it up. And now I'm going to highlight those purity seals real quick with our light blue. Just going to go around the edge. If there's any detail in the middle of that wax seal, catch that too. These are just sort of stamped on there. There's no real detail in the middle, so I'm just catching the edges to have it pop out. After that, I'm going to start highlighting up our tabard and purity seals. I've got some thin light warm gray, and I'm going to be doing some light passes to sort of help clean it up and bring some vibrancy back to that cloth after the wash. Super easy. And then again, I'm going to bring out our little detail brush with sort of a half-assed dry brush mix of bright ivory and start buffing that over the edges and folds of his cloth to get a really soft highlight. I'm not a huge fan of doing like razor edge highlights on cloth that's supposed to be very soft. Like you don't see that in the real world, so I try to keep those highlights on cloth and things like that very soft by doing that way. Here's another optional step. I've got some fluorescent paint and I'm going to drop that into the eye lenses and little cameras on the model. I like having very aggressive sort of glowy eye looks for Space Marines, and this is how I do it. It's super easy and it dries really fast and creates that sort of aggressive glow look to their eye lenses. Now we're going to work on the power blade, power sword, power halberd, whatever it's called. Starting off with some dark blue in the airbrush, I'm going to focus different areas. So a couple of places on the cutting edge and then alternating on the spine of the blade there to create that kind of fractalized power weapon, magic weapon kind of look that we're used to seeing. People have been doing this for years and years. This is just a really easy way to do it on a single edge. So you can see I have 3 separate sort of splotches there where I'm not crossing over. And when we cut in our edge highlights, it'll divide those and create that sort of mirrored sheen effect that we like from power weapons. So of course, dark blue, now we're going to light blue to create that glow effect. Just be really careful, don't blast the paint on there. And then finally, I've got some white in the airbrush. Again, all of these are user choices. You don't have to use blue. You don't have to use the exact same paint colors I'm using. But if you want to know, it was dark gray blue and sky blue and titanium white from Pro Acryl. So now we've got our sort of glow popped onto the blade there. I'm going to take that same white that I had in the airbrush and just put it right onto my palette. It's already thinned out with some flow improver. And again, bringing out the half-ass dry brush, I'm loading up my little detail brush with that white paint, getting most of it out of there, and then just gently scraping the side of my brush onto these edges on the blade there. And you can see it's really easy. As long as you keep very light brush pressure, you don't have to have the hands of a heart surgeon to draw these lines. You just gently scrape it over those lines and bevels, and it creates that really nice razor edge highlight for our power weapon. And you can stop there. I went ahead and did some little shine marks on the blade. I really like the way that looks, so I do that. If that's a little bit too advanced for you, don't feel like you have to do it. That's really easy to mess up, but if you want to live dangerously and try it out, you can. And here's the finished project. We got a ton of work done in this very short video. That Grey Knight is looking really good. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you next time.